Good morning, everybody. I'm Margaret Hinkle. I chair the Post Commission. We are today holding our 25th public meeting. Members of the public who are in attendance, welcome. Let me at this time just confirm who among the commissioners is present. Commissioner Bluestone?
Present.
Commissioner Calderon?
Present. Good morning.
Commissioner Sherry?
Present.
Commissioner Ellison?
Good morning. Yes, present.
Commissioner Keserosian?
Present.
Commissioner Luma?
Good morning, present.
Commissioner West?
Good morning, present.
And Commissioner Wynn.
Good morning. Present.
We have all 9 commissioners present. We obviously have a quorum. And let me then call the meeting to order. We are going to this morning begin with number 4 on our agenda, the discussion of the use of force regulation technical correction issue. I turn now to our general counsel, Randy Ravitz.
Thank you very much. There are really 2 things that I wanted to address, and one is a set of corrections that we asked the Secretary of State's office to make to the regulations that the Commission and the MPTC promulgated regarding the use of force by law enforcement officers last year. And those corrections are consistent with what the 2 agencies had agreed to and put before the Secretary of State's office, but there were apparently some clerical errors made on their end. So we've asked them to correct those. But before I go over those, I thought I'd turn to the more significant matter that is being put before the Commission, which is a proposal to revise the regulations in one respect. And I will, I'm sorry, somebody have a question?
I think Commissioner Ellison has.
Randy.
I can't hear. Can other people hear?
Randy, can you hear me? I'm having some problems. I'm wondering if it's on my end. That's why I wanted to clear up, because it's coming in very choppy.
Yeah, it's on your
I
end.
need to call back in.
Yeah, it's on your end, Commissioner Ellison. It's technical. On your
Okay, I'll try. I'll call back in. Okay.
And if the chair would like me to wait for that, I can do so.
If let's just give him a couple of minutes, please, Randy, and see whether he can get back in.
Okay, can you hear me, Randy?
Yes.
Randy,
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
can you hear me? Okay, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay.
And Commissioner Ellison, we decided to pause until you were back, so Randy has not gone forward with this presentation until now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I will now share on the screen what was previously circulated to the commissioners. And there's been one revision made to it that is redlined based on some feedback that was received after it was circulated. This is, can you see an authorization to pursue amendment? Is that what you're seeing?
Yes.
Okay. I will scroll down to what I think is the real heart of the matter. These provisions are provisions that are relevant to the proposal, but the one that is most significant here, the one that's really at issue, is this provision. And I will reverse the order of the way that the provision is worded. As you can see, the second half of the provision contains a prohibition. It says a law enforcement officer shall not intentionally sit, kneel, or stand on an individual's chest, neck, or spine, and shall not force an individual to lie on their stomach. And then the first part of that provision provides an exception to that general prohibition. It says except to temporarily gain, regain, or maintain control of an individual and apply restraints. So then the question was raised to the two agencies, the Post Commission and the MPTC, of whether officers might interpret that exception to state that they have permission to intentionally sit, kneel, or stand on an individual's neck in order to temporarily gain, regain, or maintain control and apply restraints, and whether that would run afoul of the prohibition on chokeholds that's contained in the statute. And my understanding is that that's not what was intended. And in fact, there are at least two provisions in the regulations that should put officers on notice of that. One appears directly below, and it says a law enforcement officer shall not obstruct the airway or limit the breathing of any individual, nor shall a law enforcement officer restrict oxygen or blood flow to an individual's neck or head. An individual placed on their stomach during restraint should be moved into a recovery position or seated position as soon as practical. And then the next one that should put officers on notice of the need to avoid chokeholds states it expressly and says a law enforcement officer shall not use a chokehold or other tactics that restrict or obstruct an individual's breathing or oxygen or blood flow to an individual's head or neck. And a law enforcement officer shall not be trained to use a lateral vascular neck restraint, carotid restraint, or other action that involves the placement of any part of a law enforcement officer's body on or around a person's neck in a manner that limits the person's breathing or blood flow. Nevertheless, the idea behind this proposal would be to make it absolutely clear, to leave no doubt about the matter. So the proposal is to change this language in subsection 6 in a couple of ways. And one is to eliminate the word neck. And in fact, the MPTC has already voted to approve that. And again, these regulations by statute need to be promulgated jointly by both agencies. So any amendment would need to be approved by both agencies. And the MPTC's removal of the word neck and the Post Commission's removal of the word neck might be just fine to achieve the objective, because then the idea would be that this provision would have nothing to say one way or another about putting pressure on somebody's neck or head, and officers should then look to those other two provisions, which provide restrictions on force on one's neck or head that would restrict blood flow or oxygen. However, there is the risk that somebody might look at this change and take away from it the wrong message, that in fact a decision has been made to now authorize officers to put pressure on somebody's neck because that term is removed. So in order to avoid that, this proposal would still delete the word neck from that provision, which would then remove it from the exception, but then add back in no event may a law enforcement officer intentionally sit, kneel, or stand on an individual's neck. So it works back in the prohibition on putting pressure on somebody's neck. And then there was a suggestion made by one of the commissioners to add "or head," consistent with the intent behind this. Now, again, that would need to be approved by both agencies, and then there's a regulatory process that would need to be followed. The same process used to promulgate regulations would need to be followed in order to amend the regulations. So this proposal would ask the commission to authorize the staff to take steps to go forward to amend the regulations and work with the MPTC in that regard, and to amend the regulations on an emergency basis. And in order to do so on an emergency basis, the commission would need to make the finding that's stated in subsection G, that doing so immediately is necessary for the preservation of the public health, safety, and general welfare, and observance of the requirements of notice, and affording interested persons an opportunity to present data, views, or arguments prior to amendment. So at this point, as opposed to afterwards, would be contrary to the public interest. Because why? Because a misunderstanding of the regulation by law enforcement officers could cause them to engage in conduct that constitutes an unlawful chokehold and then endangers individuals who are subject to uses of force. And as we discussed at the last meeting, what it means for a regulation to be promulgated on an emergency basis is not that there's no opportunity for public comment, it's that the regulation goes into effect immediately and stays in effect for 3 months. And during that time, there's an opportunity for public comment and for a hearing in this case. And if those steps are not taken, then the regulation expires. And if those steps are taken, then the agency can make the regulation permanent. And so this authorization would authorize, again, the staff working under the executive director to work with the MPTC to take all those steps that are necessary to do it on an emergency basis, and to seek to amend the regulation in the ways that I've said, so that it now reads as you see here in subsection B. So I will stop sharing. And if the chair would like, I can entertain any questions.
Yes, please. Let me ask the commissioners what comments or questions they may have. Yes, Commissioner West, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, in regards to the emergency, I think this is particularly apt for that provision, because obviously we don't want to take the chance that any officer is going to misunderstand this language. So I think an emergency vote is certainly in need. But secondly, in regard to the amendment, it clearly was not the intent of the legislature to have an exception such that an officer could kneel on somebody's neck or head. And it definitely was not the intent of the subcommittee to do that. So I think the amendments that you proposed, Mr. Ravitz, make sense to me. But just to be clear, since this has to go back to the MPTC and they've only deleted the term neck, what is there a request to the MTC to consider our provisions as well? I just don't want there to be a gap where there could be a misunderstanding.
Yes, we've alerted their attorneys to this additional language, and I'm hopeful that they would accept it. It's intended to be consistent with what they've already approved, but it would require a full meeting of the MPTC to approve that. And so there's a chance that this could end up coming back before the commission with some further revision made by the MPTC. But it's basically necessary for there to be some degree of back and forth between the two meetings in order for this to go forward.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Kazarosian.
Thank you. I also think this is very important to change on an emergency basis. Clearly, what we were trying to do is to make sure that we mirrored or were consistent with the regulations that, I'm sorry, with the statute that it bars chokeholds, and there's no exception for anything. It just bars chokeholds. And this does, without this clarification, does cause some confusion. And I know it's been a concern by at least a couple of the representatives, or they've reached out to us about trying to resolve this. So I'm really glad that it is resolved, and I agree with the language in it as well.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from my fellow commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bluestone, please.
Good morning. Am I off mute? Yeah. I certainly understand the seriousness and importance of this issue, and would just like to ask my fellow commissioners in law enforcement if there is anything that they feel would impact the safety of officers by making this change.
And I think we have first Commissioner Wynn and then Commissioner Ellison have indicated that they wish to speak. Commissioner Wynn, please.
I was in the briefing with representatives when this issue was raised, and I understood their concern and the confusion. I've been teaching defensive tactics for a long time. I don't think that there's officer safety concerns raised by this. This is essentially prohibited conduct already, so I don't see a problem. I would support clarifying the language.
Commissioner Wynn, at least I had a little difficulty hearing you. So I wonder whether you could just get a little closer to the microphone, and if you wouldn't mind just repeating, please, what you said.
Sorry, I was in the briefing with the representatives when this question was raised, and I understood their need for clarification. I've been teaching this stuff for a long time, and this is already prohibited conduct, so I don't have any problem with amending the language.
Thank you. Commissioner Ellison, please.
Yeah, thank you. So my question was, I just wanted to know if the MPTC, because this is a statewide and all departments have dealt with these type of training and tactics differently, is the MPTC going to do a statewide training on what the proper procedures are going to be going forward, and as it's obligated by the law and by the post?
Well, I don't want to speak for the MPTC, but I know that there are provisions requiring them to do training on use of force. So if they approved this and this was jointly promulgated, then I would hope that this would be incorporated into their training.
Right, that would be my only concern with it, is that if everyone's going to be trained in the same way, so there's no gray area as to the different agencies and how their training is implemented as it's used to force, even with the changes from the post.
Are there any other questions or comments from my fellow commissioners? I don't think I see any indication of that. So back to you, Randy. What is it specifically at this point that you would seek from us?
I had circulated to commissioners a suggested motion that could be offered by one of the commissioners, which would be a motion to approve of this authorization as it has been presented at this meeting.
Is there such a motion? Yes.
Yes, I move. So move.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
And is there any further discussion? If not, let me call for a vote, please. Commissioner Bluestone,
I approve.
Commissioner Calderon,
I approve.
Commissioner Sherry,
Yes, I approve.
Mr. Ellison,
Yes,
Commissioner Kazarosian,
Yes.
Commissioner Luma,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Wynn.
Yes.
I also approve. It is unanimously carried. Thank you, Brandy, for your presentation. And I think with that, we can now move back to the regular order on the agenda, to the Executive Director report. Please, Enrique.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I have an update to the recertification process that we've been working very hard, and that will be the bulk of my report. If commissioners don't mind, I will start sharing my screen because I have a few slides that I want to update you on. So give me a minute to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, let me just, okay. So let me just start by mentioning, commissioners, that I am very pleased to report that tomorrow we will successfully achieve a major milestone in the life of the Post Commission. We're on track to recertify most officers whose statutory certification is set to expire. And we will do so because we have a high degree of confidence that those officers have met the requirements for recertification that are stipulated in the statute and are further clarified in our regulations. Tomorrow, we will be sending each agency a notice that a recertification packet is available in the portal. And this packet includes a report with the recertification status of each officer, as well as individualized letters to those officers with a unique certification number for tracking purposes. I want to acknowledge the tireless work of several people at Post and the Office of Technology of the Commonwealth, who for a few months now, have been working very hard to design, build, test, and develop functionality to process a large amount of key data, which enables us to accomplish what we're accomplishing. The teams were literally finishing functionality yesterday, I should say, and that was the notification functionality. I would tell you, if this was a construction project, you should not lean on the walls because the paint is literally still drying. I want to also recognize the collaboration and patience of all the agencies who submitted information that was requested. They all had to follow and execute a new process in a very short time frame while having to perform all the regular duties. So I submit to you, commissioners, that this is also an important milestone for law enforcement agencies in the Commonwealth. So with that, let me give you just an update of what you saw yesterday with the latest numbers as presented in the PowerPoint. Commissioners will remember that there's 431 agencies that we believe fall within the scope of Post. And at this moment, we have 399 that have submitted all the information required. 21 have been granted an extension as stipulated in our regs, and 10 agencies have confirmed that they do not have any officers between A through H. There's only one agency pending submission, and that is Franklin County Sheriff's Office, but I believe they will submit something literally today. So I'm fairly confident that we have close to 100% compliance. Let me mention something briefly about extensions. Of those agencies that submitted extension requests, 16 have done so the way we wanted, with a complete roster of their officers. And there's 5 agencies that have yet to submit those rosters. They're stipulated here in the slide. And we expect that they will do that also today or very shortly. You are familiar with these type of slides, but this is the updated numbers. We have 6,333 officers whose agencies have successfully submitted all their information. The count of officers with rosters that submitted extension requests stands at 2,100 officers, 2,181 to be precise. And we have an estimate of only 20 officers of those 5 small agencies that I mentioned in the previous slide, that would constitute a total of 8,567 officers. As mentioned before, the large number of officers, the 2,000 officers in the extension request, is skewed mostly because both Boston PD and the Massachusetts State Police have submitted extension requests, and I know are working very hard to send us those completed packets in the coming days. The updated categories that have successfully submitted. This is the current breakdown of the 6,300 officers. 5,606, or 88%, fall in the category of certified. 693 have some exceptions. So this amounts to 98% of officers that will be certified or conditionally certified. I would note that per our regulations, an extension request also places the officer in the category of conditionally certified. And that leaves essentially 60 people that merit further review, and 7 individuals that at this time are not being certified. I want to clarify that the 60 individuals are not currently certified or conditionally certified, and they will likely result in us scheduling either additional review or eventually a hearing as per the regulations provide. As this slide suggests, that does not include the 2,100 officers that are pending submission because they requested an extension. But there's no reason to believe that these percentages will not hold similarly, that we would have some 10 or so % of officers that would have to have some kind of remediation in the conditions for the recertification, and perhaps a similar small percentage that we'd have to look at to schedule a hearing or not certify them at this time. Just briefly about the functionality I was just describing, we will send notifications to agencies tomorrow. These notifications, this will be an email that will alert anybody who submitted the recertification packet through the JIRA portal. They will be notified that they can go get that packet in that site that allows us to track all communications in a secure way, and that's the way we designed it to be. The individuals who submitted those informations will be able to download that packet. And the packet will include a summary report of all those individual officers and the individual officers' notifications. So we are asking agencies to distribute to these individual officers these notifications that include their unique certification number, and keep a copy of these notifications in each officer's personnel file. Again, we were just testing this type of process in the last few days. And that has been successful, and would expect that will continue in that fashion. Just 2 more slides on this process. We're updating and have updated our website to include what it means to be in a certain category. I jumped into the second bullet, and that's what we're terming understanding your certification status. We expect that there may be a lot of questions as to how people can submit information that is required, etc. And all of that will be available for officers and agencies to go look. We are also anticipating that it's necessary to make public a list of officers by certification status that includes those that are certified and conditionally certified. We have the idea to do this in a couple of different ways. 2 reports, one that people can search, that would be sorted by last name and by agency, so that anybody can look up at people people's individual certifications by agency, or a report that will include the ability to look up by certification category, who falls in the certification status and who is maybe in the conditionally certified status. We are not thinking about reporting other status at this time. Because this continues to be a fluid process, we will update the certification lists perhaps at the end of each month or at the end of each quarter as deadlines expire. Commissioners will remember that the deadline for submission, for the initial submission, was June 15. Those agencies that were granted an extension, the deadline is July 15. And giving ourselves a little bit of a time to process as we now know is necessary. We anticipate that we could be updating those lists at the end of the month, requesting the deadlines at the middle of the month and then updating them as necessary in the next month. Just one more note on conditional certifications. I mentioned this already, but it bears mentioning again. The immediate deadline is July 15 for agencies who submitted a request for extension. The next significant milestone will be 90 days after today, which is a date that the statute and the regulations provide for meeting certain conditions of those certification. Post asks that agencies notify Post prior to the conclusion of that period, and in order to manage workflow, that they send us as many officers that they can that have completed or complied with those with those conditions attached to their conditional certification. And of course, we continue to request, capture, manage, and process all the information regarding this status, because this continues to be a fluid process. We'll continue to get to process information on all of those agencies that submitted requests for extension, and that will continue to keep the team busy as we have been in the last few weeks. So that concludes the part of my report. When it comes to certification, commissioners, I can pause, of course, and see if there's any questions.
And before we entertain questions and comments, Enrique, let me echo what you said at the beginning of your presentation about the tireless work that the staff and the everybody involved in this process, including the Office of Technology of the Commonwealth, has engaged in to accomplish this objective. Speaking personally, I think I doubted at the time I was appointed to the commission that it would be possible for the commission to accomplish this objective within the very aggressive deadlines of the statute. You have proven me wrong on that. I really want to, I know I speak for my fellow commissioners in saying that we applaud all of you who have been involved in this process, the members of the staff who have worked tirelessly, those outside the commission who have worked with you to accomplish this objective. We applaud your efforts. And with that, please, any questions and comments from my fellow commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Bluestone, please.
I just want to echo that. I think it's just an incredible accomplishment, and really want to express my thanks to all the staff, but also to all the agencies out there that worked with us to pull this together. It really is sort of amazing that we're hitting this deadline. So thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. I did too, Madam Chair. Had a night or two in the middle of the night where I woke up thinking, are we really going to make it? But it's all because the team that worked very hard that we're here. So I'm really proud of the team, and of course the agencies that cooperated with our very tight timeframes as well.
Other questions and comments of Enrique? I know that Marcia has, that Commissioner Kasrosian has been wanting to lead the to serve as cheerleader and lead the clapping. So I think with that, we will all
Thank you.
yes, to everyone involved in the process. And I think, Enrique, there being no further questions or comments about this, except our absolute admiration, let me move on to the next item you were going to address with us, which is the technology procurement update.
That's right. Madam Chair and Commissioners, there is in the packet a memo describing the procurement process that we have been conducted for a few months now. We did it, of course, at the same time as we were developing functionality that you heard about one more time. And this is what I call the permanent solution. The JIRA portal that I described has been was a temporary solution that served us very well, by the way, but allowed us to be flexible and design the workflows that we needed to accomplish what we need to do. There's functionality that we have not quite developed. And the idea from the beginning was to have a consultant or a professional services firm to come help us in the process of developing the permanent solution. This solution was recommended by the Office of Technology of the Commonwealth to be utilizing a platform that's called Salesforce, that's customizable and is very good at implementing workflows like the ones we need via technology, a collaboration, through the internet and these very sophisticated databases. And what we are looking to do is hire the firm that is going to help us implement it. The good news is that we've done a lot of work already through JIRA that we will be able to then implement in Salesforce. But again, we are looking to bring in and finalize negotiations with the apparent successful bidder that emerged out of this procurement. I just want to mention also that Commissioner Luma, joined myself, Gina Joyce, and Maurice Myrie, our CTO, and Lindsay O'Connell, the person that helped us from the Technology Services Office, and many other members. These were the 5 voting members of the procurement team. There were many others that helped us look at the responses, think about them, etc. And that was a process that was very robust. I described in the memo that we asked the respondents to simulate a case study in their oral presentations. This was not meant to be just a sales call, but we really wanted to see them work and interact with us, both teams, the technology team and the business team. And we were able to do that because we clearly knew what we wanted, because we were developing ourselves in JIRA, as I just described. So we are at the juncture of being very close to executing a contract with them. The Technology Office of the Commonwealth has helped us really negotiate, the necessary terms. And we are coming at this juncture to update you on this and authorize me to ultimately enter into a contract with the apparent successful bidder. I don't know if Commissioner Luma would like to expound on any of that. She was very much a part of the process.
Oh, well, thank you. No, I just want to acknowledge all the work that went into it. It was a very extensive process and with many hours that were contributed by many people in order to go through the procurement process. And so I just want to say thank you to all those that participated and the diligence that was performed around making the selection and moving forward with the process. So thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. That concludes my part of my report, Commissioner, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I wonder whether there are any questions from my fellow commissioners as to what you have just addressed. Don't think I see any hands in the air. Let me again echo Commissioner Luma's thanks to everyone participating in that process. Enrique, are you anticipating that we will take a vote on anything today on this issue?
Well, actually, it would be appropriate to have that authority, Madam Chair. This is envisioned to be a large contract. As I described in the memo, we will enter into task orders incrementally, which is the way, these days these contracts are performed. And we also include that amount in the budget that our CFAO is going to be reviewing with you shortly. So it would be great to have that authority by virtue of a vote on these topics only, but we could also assume that it's that I have that authority as you approve the budget, hopefully, the next commission meeting, which includes this item.
But you would prefer, putting aside the fact that we will not vote on the budget today, excuse me, but you would prefer, if we could get an affirmative vote, that the commissioners vote to approve your entering into and negotiating the terms of this contract. Is that it?
That would be, yes, Commissioner, that's preferable.
Thank you. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second? Commissioner Wynn, I think, has seconded it. Is there any further discussion or comment? If not, Commissioner Bluestone,
Yes.
Commissioner Calderon,
My apologies. Yes, I was on mute. I'm a yes.
Commissioner Sherry,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellison,
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarosian,
Yes.
Commissioner Luma,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
Commissioner Wynn,
Yes.
and I also approve. So the motion is unanimously carried. Thank you. Next on the agenda is item number 5, the Cadet Commission and a reference to Chapter 60, Section 108. Enrique, I think you were going to present this, please.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, I received a letter that I included in the packet from the co-chairs of the relevant committee, Co-Chair Timothy and Co-Chair Gonzalez, that are putting together a commission that is stipulated in Section 108 of our statute. This commission is meant to study the feasibility of a statewide cadet program, something that I understand has been in prior discussions in prior years, and the commission is tasked with recommending potential changes to any legislation that may be applicable to implement something like that. The statute speaks about one member of that commission is supposed to be the training director of the post commission, and we don't have such a position. And I want to bring this matter to you, commissioners, to ideally designate somebody who you believe might be well positioned to serve as part of that commission. That commission begins to meet in, I believe, July 12th is the first scheduled meeting. I don't know how many meetings they will have, but this is a commission that is supposed to report its findings by the end of this calendar year. So, so I wanted to put the matter before you, Madam Chair, as to whether you thought it's appropriate to have that discussion here.
I certainly think it's appropriate to have such a discussion. Are there any questions or comments about what we are required to do under the statute with regard to the Cadet Commission. I don't think, yes, Commissioner Keserojan, please.
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a commissioner. It can be someone that the commission designates. So it could be a staffer or.
That's correct, Commissioner. I submit to you that I think a commissioner would be in a good position to be part of this commission. I believe, given her background, I believe Commissioner Bluestone would be interested to be recognized and designated for that. I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I think it would be good to have somebody with her type of background, and maybe I could let her expound on that.
Over to you, please, Commissioner Bluestone. Would you be willing to serve in that capacity?
Thank you, Director Zuniga. I'm very interested in the training issue and would certainly be happy to serve in this capacity, but would also be happy to defer if there is someone else who is interested. So thank you for considering me.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I hereby nominate Commissioner Bluestone to serve in that capacity. Is there a second to my nomination?
Second.
Commissioner Bluestone gets no vote on this one. She's already agreed to do it. Commissioner Calderon, do you agree?
Yes, I agree.
Commissioner Sherry?
Yes.
Commissioner Ellison?
Yes.
Commissioner Keserojan?
Yes.
Commissioner Luma?
Yes.
Commissioner West?
Yes.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes.
Thank you. Unanimously, we have approved our fellow Commissioner Bluestone serving on the Cadet Commission, and we will await reports from her as to the work of the commission. And I think with that, let me now turn to item number 3 on the agenda, the fiscal year 23 budget. And I turn this over to our Chief Financial Officer, Eric Rebello-Pradas, and to the good work that he's been doing, working also in part with our fellow commissioner, our treasurer, Ellison, in connection with this budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to share my screen quick just to move this along. There we are. Okay, everyone should see something memorandum. Okay, very good. Madam Chair, just before I start on the budget, and I will be brief, I just wanted to point out that the memo that Enrique, Director Zuniga was referring to earlier on the Salesforce procurement, the technology procurement, it was, that memo should have said that it came from him to the commissioners and not me. That was a mistake on my part, so I do apologize for that. We'll certainly resubmit. So anyway, I'm going to get right to the budget now. So the commissioners, you've all received a memo on FY23 budget, so I won't get into that. You can peruse that at certainly at your leisure. And the first thing I'm going to do is head to this summary. So what I'm going to basically do is go through a high-level summary of where we are and then where we're going. I will then go into just a little bit of detail on the budget, the operating budget, just call out a few of the larger items. And then we'll just have a sort of a brief review. And of course, if anyone needs, any commissioners need any more detail outside of the meeting, I'd be more than happy to sit down with them to certainly discuss it in finer points. I won't get into FY21 as that has long been closed, but it's on here for your reference. FY22, I'll merely point out that we are still, just as I reported back in May, we are still set to end the fiscal year, which ends today, at roughly $2.2 million, which is what we were predicting earlier last month. So I think we're still definitely on par for that. Payroll has kicked up a little bit, obviously, because we've been onboarding more employees. So therefore, we will end FY22 with a positive balance of $2.66 million. Now, remember, we are requesting that that amount be rolled over into FY23, mainly to pay for the technology procurement. So in addition to that rollover, we're also looking at an appropriation of $5 million, which is in the FY23 budget. Now, of course, the budget hasn't been released yet by the conference committee, but because the $5 million is the same as the House and the Senate, we believe that that will hold for when the conference committee finally unveils the budget, which probably will be sometime soon. So we will begin FY23 with about $7.66 million. And as you can see there, we're predicting expenditures to be slightly over the allocation. Nothing to be concerned about with that ending balance, the negative balance there. I will get into that just a little bit later. I'll touch upon that. So what we could do now is I'm just going to head over to back to this screen. This gives a better view of the budget. And just the green section here, I'm just going to briefly point out, you've seen this before, but it has been updated. So basically, first column, that's our budget, what we started with for FY22. Second column is what we've incurred right now through May, because those are what we had expected. The blue actual expenditure through May, that's merely a reference point. You really want to use the incurred column as what you want to look at. And then here in this balance column, this is what is left over that we have after we look at our incurred expenses. We then have an estimate for expenditures in June. June obviously ending today, but it'll still take a few days to process all of the payments during the accounts payable period. So this is just an estimate right now. And then this is the final balance that we're left with. As I mentioned before, the $2.66 million. This little red thing here is only about $99,000. It's just we were over budget on a couple of items that fell within office supplies and expenses. But it is more than outweighed by all of the positive balances that you see here. So nothing to be concerned about, certainly. And then there's that 2.66 that'll get balanced forward into FY23. Looking over at FY23, the blue column here, I'm just going to point out a couple things. As I had said before, it's about $7.8 million is kind of what we're looking at for forecasted expenditures. I'm going to point out two of the items on here, just the payroll, which is the largest, and that is the 3.33 million that you see there. So what I'm going to do is just scroll down real quick to this screen. This gives a little bit of a better detail on the payroll. So you can see FY22 and FY23 here side by side. So this is basically what we're looking at, the 9 commissioners, the salaries that are appropriated there. We have 14 existing employees. This is what the salaries would come to at a full year for FY23. We are forecasting to hire an additional 12 throughout the FY23 fiscal year. So we have estimated that expenditure to be somewhere around 1.2 million. And then here's the subtotal of about 3.297. We also will be, are predicting to be onboarding a few contractors as well, not full-time employees. That estimate's around $300,000. So the grand total of payroll is going to look somewhere around 3.6 million is what we're looking at right now. Again, that would be for about 27 employees and about 1 or 2 contractors. I'm just going to go back up to, this gives the org chart gives a nice picture of what we're looking at for FY23 as well. You can see some of the detail here. The dark blue boxes represent positions that are currently filled. The light blue are positions that we will be filling soon and throughout FY23. So again, this represents 27 positions. This one here, product manager, this could be a contract position. That's why it's in this checkered form here. But nevertheless, these would be strictly your full-time employees. And I'm just going to go back up to the budget. The second item I wanted to point out here besides payroll is just the technology, which is down here at this $3.3 million. This basically, the lion's share of this is the 2.6 million that we are allocating for the technology procurement that the director had spoke about just a few minutes ago. So I just wanted to point out that the rest is maintenance and obviously other smaller costs that we're going to need as we continue to improve technology on the side of the certifications and standards. Just to go back to the, just roll up to the summary here. We are. I just wanted to point out again for FY23, this ending balance, I just wanted to highlight this number here only represents barely 2% of the entire budget. I do want to point out though that this is not uncommon for these early type budgets. Remember, we started with a $5 million allocation, which was a very rough estimate that was put together because there was no committee, there was no commission at the time that number came up. So as we learn more and as we experience more, we'll be able to refine our numbers. So for the first 2 years, at least, of any nascent agency, you're of course going to, very, very difficult to hold within a number that was a rough estimate. So I'll point that out first. And then secondly, keep in mind too that we do our best to predict how we're going to onboard employees. So we're looking to onboard another 12 or 13 in FY23. But of course, that could be staggered. We could say it'll take 2 months to hire someone, but all of a sudden it turns out it'll take 4 months. The longer you go in those types of delays, obviously you're going to save more money. I believe that just a few of those positions that would be delayed and most likely will be delayed would be more than enough to offset this negative expenditure here. So I just wanted to point out those two items there. Right. And see that just, I'm going to leave this up in case anyone has any questions at this point. And then I'm just going to make 2 more points and then I will be finished. Any questions? I can't see anyone, so because I'm sharing my screen, so my apologies.
A quick question, Eric, Commissioner Ellison.
Yes.
How many of those employees, just for the commissioners, because I was present, would be part-time? If you know.
Yes, absolutely. So anything that says on these, Commissioner, that's a very good point you bring up. Anything that says PR, that would be considered part-time. They can work only so many hours because they're post-retirement employees. So right now we're looking at, we currently have 1, 2, 3, we have 5 right now.
But we should clarify, Eric, that that applies for next year. We were there was an exception of this year for given the COVID emergency.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, you're correct, Director. Yes, the for the 22 calendar year, 2022, the legislature had allowed us post-retirement employees to they did not have to hold to their caps. The caps were lifted just for that time because of the pandemic, so they could be with us for full time. So even though it says these are generally a part-time, for 2022, these individuals have certainly been working on a full-time basis, but going forward, it would be more part-time.
I do see Commissioner Bluestone's hand is up.
Yes, Commissioner.
Hi, thank you very much for putting this information together. I'm looking at this budget from the perspective of a business owner, and what I'm noticing is that our expenditures for FY22 are approximately $550,000, which is 25% of our expenditures for the consultant legal services line item, and that this is only 13% less than what we will spend in FY22 for our entire salaried staff. And it looks to me like in FY23, we're on track to have spent approximately $1 million on that line item in 2 years. And in FY23, our employee compensation line item is going up by 300%, but our consultant legal services line item is only going down by about 40%. And I'm just wondering if this is an area where we could look more closely at whether we can shift some of the services and some of the expenditures towards the salaried staff, and just wanted to raise that as a question as we consider this budget.
That's an excellent point, Commissioner. And when I was putting the budget together for FY23 with Commissioner Ellison and Director Zuniga, one of the things that we had talked about is sort of that particular flow, especially down where you see the legal services. We do anticipate with the onboarding of 2 deputy general counsels coming up in a couple of weeks that there will be less reliance on the legal services. And I did keep the budget, however, a little bit high on that note, just in case, because we just don't know what's coming down the road. I don't know if there's going to be more litigation or what have you. So I wanted to be careful on there. If everything turns out on the positive and we're able to limit the amount of usage of the legal consultant, then yes, we would have extra dollars there that we could then allocate for other resources throughout the budget. Also, the thing to note too is the salary is very low, Commissioner, on FY22. Please keep in mind that the first full-time employee was onboarded in September of 2021. And so it was a slow process of getting the others onboarded. So that final number for FY22 certainly does not represent an annualized number. So that's one of the reasons why it's so small compared to FY23.
Thank you. I'm just suggesting that this is an area where we might be able to be more frugal and efficient with public money. So something just to consider. Thank you.
No, of course. Thank you.
If I could just expound real brief on Eric's point, Commissioner, that's clearly the intention. We relied a lot by necessity early on in this fiscal year, and the numbers sort of reflect that. But we clearly are going to trend in the direction of acquiring and retaining the talent that we need in that area.
Thank you very much for that presentation, Eric, and for the careful work that you have put into the budget. I want to also thank my fellow Commissioner Ellison, our treasurer, for the work that you have done in working with Eric. As I understand it, you will anticipate that we will vote on the budget at our next meeting. Is that it?
Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair. I think it's good to present it like this and have commissioners, some time to digest and come back at a subsequent meeting, to approve. Myself and Eric, of course, are available for any questions any one of the commissioners may have in between. So,
thank you. And perhaps just making mention, Enrique, of questions. We are not, did not put into our agenda for today anything for public comment, but I wonder whether you could please explain to the public if they have any questions about any of the issues that we have addressed, what the procedure is to get those responses or comments, questions answered or comments made.
Yes, yes, thank you. Any questions or comments from the press? Always should be directed to Cindy Campbell as our website denotes. Any questions that have to do with a type of public request matter can come to any one of us in the website. We have the phone numbers and the email addresses. We monitor constantly. We need to know who to reply to. And that's why we ask members from the public to send those questions in writing so that we can respond to them directly.
Thank you. Fellow commissioners, is there anything else that you would like us to address at this point? Don't think I see anybody responding affirmatively. I do not know of anything that was not anticipated at the time of posting for us to take up. And therefore, I will at this time entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss our strategy with respect to the ongoing litigation, because an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the post commission. That litigation is the civil actions now consolidated of Hovsepian, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, versus Post, and also the New England Police Benevolent Association versus Post. Again, those have been consolidated in the Suffolk Superior Court. A majority vote by roll call, is required to go into executive session. Let me say that the open session will not reconvene at the conclusion of our executive session. So with that, please, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session. Is there such a motion?
Yes, so moved for the reasons stated.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further question or comment? If not, Commissioner Bluestone, please.
Yes, I approve.
Commissioner Calderon.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, did you say yes?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Sherry,
Yes.
Commissioner Ellison,
Yes.
Commissioner Kazarosian,
Yes.
Commissioner Luma,
Yes.
Commissioner West,
Yes.
and Commissioner Wynn.
Yes.
I also approve. The motion is unanimously carried. Thanks to all who have attended this meeting and to the members of the public who have also attended. Our meeting is now concluded. We will go into executive session, fellow commissioners, in approximately 5 minutes.